The information found in this podcast is not a substitute for help from a licensed mental health professional. Hi, and welcome to the Women in Depth podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Lourdes Viado. Join me as we explore the inner lives of women, their struggles, fears, hopes, and dreams. We'll go beneath the surface and take a deeper look at what is hidden, unknown, uncertain, and uncomfortable. Hi, and welcome back to the podcast. Today, my guest is Dr. Ashlee Greer. She was here previously on the podcast in episode 76, where she talked about how to cut ties with toxic people. Today, Ashlee is here to talk about the subject of her upcoming book, and it's a new and different way of looking at codependency, and it's what Ashlee calls everyday codependency. Ashlee helps women stop people-pleasing and have a deeply self-expressed hell yes life, to leave self-doubt, fear, paralysis, and worry behind. She helps her clients deconstruct the toxic cycle that's kept them living a lie of who they feel they have to be, to develop the courage to follow their heart, develop deep self-trust and faith, to honor their own internal knowing, to live a life that's self-confident, joyful, fulfilled, vibrant, passionate, and free. She has her Ph.D. in psychology and is powerfully psychic. She's helped hundreds of clients over almost 15 years to live a fully turned on, lit up life of deep truth and authenticity. Hi, Ashlee, and welcome back.
Hey, it's so great to be here.
I'm so happy that you're here. And I feel like this is such an important, necessary topic. This new way that you have framed codependency, which is everyday codependency.
Yes, absolutely. It's basically a whole new way of thinking about codependency that is no longer about this framework. Because, usually codependency is talked about within the framework of you're in a relationship with an alcoholic and you're trying to get them to quit drinking or something. We've all read Codependent No More, and that's the framework of the book. And people are like, I don't know who this is, but this isn't me. And it's not helpful, right?
Yeah.
The idea behind everyday codependency is that it's not something that happens in relationship. It's a coping mechanism. It's a coping mechanism for a way that we try to get more love by controlling what other people think of us and controlling others through overgiving and sacrificing. Because the whole thing with if it's a coping mechanism is it's something that we can change. It's not about then understanding us in relationship. It's just about understanding ourselves. I find that the sort of traditional way that we look at codependency is really anchored, like I said, within the context of addictive relationships. Relationships where we have one partner who is an addict of some sort, who's a gambler, who's a sex addict, who is an alcoholic, who's a drug addict, etc. The kind of codependency that I'm talking about actually is far more common, to tell you the truth. This is why I call it everyday codependency, because I believe probably about 80% of our culture, particularly women, have some aspects of this, right? Because it develops within the context of parental relationships, sibling relationships, peer relationships that are emotionally absent, invalidating, overly busy, overly critical, overly controlling, and narcissistic.
And so it's the goal of this type of codependency to get love, to remain loved, to somehow just experience love. That's the driver for this.
Absolutely. The whole idea behind it is that we essentially learn when we're young that the way that I can get love is by being what other people need me to be. It's by being the good girl. It's by being the one that is quiet, the one that is well-behaved. It's by doing what people tell me to do. It's by quieting my sadness or my grief. Let's say you had a parent die and the other parent wasn't dealing with it well. It can even develop in situations like that. A parent dies, the other parent doesn't deal with it very well. What happens is you get the message that you're not allowed or entitled to your feelings, and it's your job to take care of everybody else by stuffing who you are, what you want, and how you feel deep down inside of you and making sure everybody else is okay. And so that's how you get taught to earn love.
And it's so sneaky because, there are, the things we all go through growing up where following the rules in school, you get awards, you get recognized, the teachers like you. It's reinforced in so many ways.
It really is. And it's ironic because when we become adults, one of the most amazing and profound skills we can ever have is giving ourselves the attention, approval, and affirmation that we so deeply crave. I think this is part of the reason that our society is so hurt in a way, is because everybody is feeling unloved and they're just out there seeking someone to fill their cup so desperately and doing whatever they can to get their cup filled.
And then I think in this process of, okay, let's say you get your cup filled and you get love, whatever, that can look like, this sense of still feeling sad, empty, and anxiety, because you're getting, I guess, what you could call love, but you're really not being loved for who you are, and you're really not showing up. So everyone is in these, quote, loving relationships with neither person really being present authentically.
Absolutely. That's something that I often talk about. And it's something that I have a free ebook that I can tell the folks on your podcast how to get at the end. And I talk about it in the ebook about how if you are not being authentic, not being true to how you feel, not being true to what you actually want, what you're doing is you're not providing other people an opportunity to know you, which means that you are actually avoiding true intimacy. The thing you truly want, this coping mechanism prevents you from getting it.
You know what I love about this too, the way you're framing this, Ashlee, is that it's all on you. If you're getting in your own way, you're not getting the love you want. You're not feeling a sense of peace and acceptance, and you're not feeling confident and empowered because you're not showing up.
Exactly, because you're so afraid of what other people will think of you. Something I talk about in this book is one of the foundational fears, motivations that happens for folks who have this everyday codependent coping mechanism is that they have a terrifying fear of being thrown out of the tribe if they show up who they are. So what I mean by being thrown out of the tribe is, imagine back in like evolutionary times, we're all living in caves and stuff. If other people didn't like us, we could get thrown out of the cave and we could starve to death, freeze to death, we could die. We still have this internal, guttural, instinctual desire to be accepted and to be approved of by others, because part of us fear that we're going to be thrown out of the tribe and that we're going to be cast out and that we won't survive.
And so that is the almost unconscious driver of this wanting to be what others want us to be in order to stay safe, to not be thrown out and annihilated to certain death.
I love that you use the word annihilated. And it's so true, because if you think about it, yes, so much of it is culturally conditioned. As you said, in school, we want to get good grades. We want to get the first place in the race, or we want to be, we want to earn all the pats on the head, right? But, I know that you go into a lot of the unconscious work, and that, you love Jung and all of these things as well. If you think about it in terms of some of these more instinctual fears, that means that there is a driver inside of us in the collective unconscious that says, I have to have a fear of annihilation if I don't belong. Which, because we're in this whole new era, we are now empowered to shift that.
In your book, if someone was going to pick it up and flip through it, what would be some of the things that would stand out the most initially?
The things that would stand out the most are, I really like this. There's two things that I want to talk about here. One is that there is a gross misunderstanding that codependency equals being an empath or being empathic.
Yeah, that's a big one. You see that everywhere online.
Yep. And it's absolutely false. 100% false. One does not equate the other. Yes, there are a lot of people who are empaths and who are empathic who tend towards codependency, particularly as codependent coping mechanism. However, the way I look at it is being an empath and having empathy is feeling it, feeling what another person feels. Codependency, this everyday codependency, is feeling it's your job to fix it.
I love that distinction.
Because how often do we feel when we feel someone else's pain, we feel that it's our job to make it better.
And that's not part of being an empath. The part of being the empath is the feeling. The part of I need to fix it is the everyday codependency.
Absolutely. And ironically, it ends up feeding back into what I call the toxic cycle. The toxic cycle is basically that we perpetuate this on ourselves and that we end up becoming essentially the perpetrators of this cycle on ourselves and on other people unknowingly. This is totally unconscious. What I mean by this is when we try to fix it, when somebody else is feeling bad, what we're doing is invalidating their emotions. We're telling them it's not okay to be sad. It's not okay to be angry, but it's not okay to struggle or to encounter difficulty in our life. When you and I both know that when we encounter struggle and difficulty in our life, that's when we grow, right?
Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite quotes is with Carl Jung is that there's no growth in consciousness without suffering. If we're comfortable, we're not growing.
100%. And so there's so many people who have this amazing ability. They're highly sensitive and they feel other people and they're so heart-centered, which is such a gift, but they've never been taught to really harness that gift. And so what they think, because of this conditioning, which has resulted in this coping mechanism, they think that it's their job to fix it. And this ultimately comes from one of the things that one of the issues people have that comes from this everyday codependent is they have an issue with sitting with uncomfortable emotions. They feel as though to sit with an uncomfortable emotion, whether it's their own emotion or another person's emotion, means that something's wrong and I have to fix. I mean, think about it. Like even our culturally conditioned response to grief, they're there, it's okay. It's not okay. Someone just died. And we don't hold space for that. Instead, we try to remove the emotion because everybody else is uncomfortable with it.
So even the act of trying to fix it also points to the individual being themselves being uncomfortable with the feeling, which is why they're trying to fix it.
Exactly. And one of the solutions, I have about 30 different ways that we can work with this coping mechanism. But one of the most important pieces is to get comfortable being uncomfortable.
So how do you do that?
It can sound incredibly simple, but it's not easy. So one of the things you and I, we talk about things like awareness. We talk about things like being mindful, right? But a lot of people don't talk about awareness and being mindful when you're having a strong emotion, right?
Right.
When we're having a strong emotion, like say we're overwhelmed by sadness or whatever it might be, we need to empower ourselves to be able to sit with it, to be able to sit with that emotion, to experience it. Because the truth is that emotion will actually flow through us if we allow it. The problem is that we have thoughts which perpetuate it and lock it into our body and doesn't allow it to flow through us. So what I mean is, let's say you're feeling alone, right? You're feeling, it's almost Valentine's Day. Let's say you're feeling alone this Valentine's Day and you start to get sad about it. Don't guilt yourself for it. Don't shame yourself for it. Allow yourself it. Give yourself permission to feel that feeling, but feel it without in this sort of meditative space of not having to cling to these thoughts, which say, I'll never be loved. Why don't I have, a partner? Why am I always alone? What's wrong with me? The problem is we perpetuate it with thoughts. Emotions flow through us. They're a temporary state. They flow through us in like 90 seconds or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's this other quote by Rilke, the German poet, and I love it. It's one of my favorites. I give it to all my clients, and it's no feeling is final. Every feeling comes and goes. It changes like the weather. Even feeling happy, we can't be happy all the time. Our feelings are continually shifting and changing, and being able to observe them like the weather. Such a tool, a powerful tool.
Absolutely. And this actually goes to one of my foundational beliefs in my work, and I think that you share this with me, is the personal development community. A lot of these folks tend to sell an overly positive image, sort of a Pollyanna life where you're, doing positive affirmations and you live in this bubble, right? I don't think that that's actually very useful. I think it's actually kind of destructive, because what happens is what we're doing is we're actually invalidating ourselves again.
So true. I sometimes feel like there's a movement away from, it's almost like they think that you're dwelling in pain, that you're wanting to sit in it. And it's not about that. It's honoring these parts of you that are coming up for your awareness, for your consideration. And clients sometimes tell me that, wow, this really sucked today. This was painful. I don't feel good, and that's part of this process. I mean, it seems like it's masochistic, but there has to be a space and allowing for all of these emotions, especially the difficult ones, to be. And even just to sit in a room and with someone who just told you that they're angry at you, and to just let them have that anger. And before you know what I mean? Even that very basic expression of, I'm pissed at you, or I can't believe this happened. And then we immediately rush to attack or tell them it's not okay that they're angry, instead of just, okay, tell me more, help me understand this feeling.
I think we're 100% on the same page with that. And I think it's because we both have this therapeutic background in psychology that really speaks about the importance of emotions. I often talk about, like, feel your emotions, just don't unpack your bags there. It's not about, like you said, this masochistic thing of, oh, you're dwelling, oh, you're feeling sorry for yourself, oh, you're being a victim. Sometimes it's just about, like, God, this is unfair. This sucks. This hurts. And when we don't allow ourselves it, well, again, what we're doing is invalidating ourselves. And I want to explain what invalidating is, because it's kind of a psychological term that maybe not everybody knows. Basically, what invalidating means is saying that our emotions don't matter, aren't true, aren't real. Suck it up, buttercup, essentially, is what invalidation is. And so when we're saying to ourselves, no, I have to fix this. No, I have to go and do some affirmations. No, I have to find any way possible not to feel this way. We're telling ourselves that our emotions don't matter, which is essentially telling ourselves that we don't matter.
That's powerful.
This sense of feeling our emotions, the other reason it's so important, as you said in my bio with this powerfully psychic thing, is I help people really connect with their own intuition, their own extra senses, so to speak, because that's really all it is. It's really just empowering other senses. Is when we don't feel all of our emotions, we're not giving ourselves the opportunity to have access to all of the information given to us at any one time.
Oh my gosh, I love how you just said that. That was perfect. Not having access to your emotions is like you not using the GPS in your car. Any type of app that helps tell you where to go and what's going on and what to look out for. It's like you disconnect that part of you, and now you don't have that internal guiding system.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're using what others outside of you are saying, this is the way to go. This is how to feel. This is how to do relationship. This is the job you should have.
And if you go back to this everyday codependent coping mechanism that I've been talking about, this is what happens when we're young, is we're told, don't trust this inner world. You can't trust it. We lose our self-trust. We lose our trust in our emotions. We lose our connections with our emotions. And we basically outsource our instincts.
Yeah, I like that.
So I love that example of your emotions being the GPS system, because one of the things that I often hear my clients talk about is they say, oh, I have a big decision to make, and I'm asking everybody what they think, and I've asked a lot of people what I should do, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, did you consult the most important person? And they're like, who's that? You are the most important person, because you're the only one who has all the data, right?
Right.
And the most important data is the data that happens within you.
Yeah.
Psychological research even talks about, when we talk about the decision-making process, psych research shows that although we think we're making decisions with our mind, we do pro-con lists, yada, 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 we make most decisions with our heart. We make most decisions on instinct. It's not, and more information isn't usually going to be the thing that we need in order to make a decision. It's tuning into ourselves. It's trusting ourselves.
And so really, when you are going around and asking everybody what their thoughts are, this is just not going to go well for you.
Well, exactly. And again, you're invalidating yourself. You're saying, I can't trust myself.
Yeah, that's so interesting, because you have this experience too where someone has asked, it seems like 40 people, and they are no closer to a decision, or they're just going back and forth, or they don't trust themselves, or they'll even say, how do I know that what I'm feeling is the right answer?
100%, because they don't know how to tune into those emotions because they're not comfortable sitting with the discomfort of the emotions that are more challenging. And I don't like to call them good or bad emotions either, because they're all good. Even the hard ones, they're just more challenging. They're just more uncomfortable.
You know, one of the things that I love about Jungian psychology is the idea that emotions are messengers from your psyche, from your soul. And they're trying to tell you something. If you are able to allow them space, if you're able to hear them.
100%. I totally agree with that. I love how much you and I see this similarly, because not everybody does see the validity and the usefulness of emotions. But think about it. Why would we have evolved them? Why would we have evolved to have all of these emotions if they didn't serve a purpose?
Right.
It doesn't make any sense.
Well, you know what's so interesting is I was in a grocery store. I'm changing the story around a little bit. I was at a grocery store, and there was probably like a 2-year-old who was with his mother, and something happened, and the 2-year-old was just screaming and crying, and the mother took the child in her arms, and she was just saying, stop it right now, cut it out, stop it, you know. And it wasn't working. The 2-year-old kept and just got more and more and more. And to me, I just noticed that right now this 2-year-old is upset, he's sad, he's mad, and there needs to be space for that. I know you're in a grocery store and you're probably running late, but I thought that was like a really good example of this everyday stifling and dismissal of emotions, because emotions can be messy and inconvenient and loud. And for me, as far as it's been really a gift of being a mother is, you know, my son is 5 now, and I've really had to learn how to be with emotions and allow them in a far deeper way than I ever have in my practice. But truly, when space is given for these emotions, when they're allowed to be, that's all you have to do is just, you know, what are you feeling? I'm mad. You know, tell me why you're mad. You know, oh, I would be mad too. You know, that would make me really angry. And then it's just, you're able to move on. Like you said, it doesn't have to be this big drawn out thing, or even to allow my child to tell me that he's mad at me.
Exactly. You are such a great mama.
Oh, thank you. You know, but it's hard, you know, when your child tells you, you know, mommy, when you did this, you hurt my feelings. And then listening and acknowledging that and letting that be there in that space. Not saying that perhaps there are other parts of the story that I need to bring up with him, but in that moment, what has to happen in that moment is those emotions have to be allowed to be. And then after that, you can move on to making better choices, using your listening ears, all of that. But let's start with identifying the feeling and letting the feeling be there.
Well, exactly. And this is why I want to make it so clear that this everyday codependency is not always created from a place of absolute terrible toxicity where you had a narcissistic parent or something. Yes, that can make it way more acute, but it is in the fabric of our society. It's in the fabric of the way that we treat emotions and that we just invalidate emotions in general. You know what I mean? Like, your parenting strategy is really modern if you think about it. It used to be more suck it up. You know, that's the way we were all taught, you know. Be quiet, go to your room. That's not how you are in public. And if you even think about women in particular are taught that if they cry, if they're upset, if they're angry, that they're dramatic, that they're bitchy.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are then judging ourselves for having these emotions. I do, however, want to say that I do think that when we have this everyday codependency, it can make us more susceptible to toxic relationship, to toxicity. The reason being is we normalize this invalidation. It's basically a form of disrespect, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. We are the perpetrator, as you mentioned before. We are the ones invalidating. We are the ones dismissing. We're the ones turning this cycle back into itself.
Exactly. So a lot of times, you know, let's say it does come from a toxic parent, right? So they maybe were hypercritical. Let's talk about something, you know, kind of low on the spectrum of toxicity. They were hypercritical. You know, they were judgy, and they would always tell you maybe if you lost weight, you'd get a boyfriend or something like that, right? Which sucks, but it's not, you're the worst daughter in the world kind of a thing. And so you internalize that people don't love me because there's something wrong with me, right? And so then when you meet a guy later in life, you get into that relationship and he tells you, well, maybe if you weren't so dramatic, you'd be more lovable. And you believe him. because you took that internal critic, that internal judge from when you were a kid, and basically you embraced it to such a degree, it became so normal to you that you put it in your own head. And you've done that to yourself all the way between those childhood experiences and until that, intimate relationship when you were older, to the point that when somebody else says it, you believe it. You buy into it hook, line, and sinker. Because if you didn't believe it about yourself, you wouldn't believe it when someone else says it to you.
Because it's already a truth for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's powerful.
Think about that we don't believe, things don't impact us unless we believe it to a certain degree. Like if somebody were to come up to me and say like, you're the meanest person in the world, I'd laugh and I'd be like, I can be blunt. I can be kind of straightforward, but that's a lie. That's not true.
So when you know what your truth is, really when other truths are presented to you, there's also the ability to not get sucked into the drama of that truth, like to not get offended, to just kind of be able to notice that and laugh and know that that's not yours.
Exactly. And to allow it to stay as something that's about them.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to be about you fixing yourself. I often talk about this notion that it's not that we're trying to fix ourselves, that we're broken. We're trying to create new coping mechanisms, which is basically removing the conditioned crap that we operated from in the past. It's removing stuff that isn't truly us.
So how do you begin, let's say you're someone who's listening to this and it's resonating. What are the first step to even maybe determining that, yes, this everyday codependency is a challenge for me?
First steps to recognizing it.
What if someone is thinking that, no, I'm just being loving and caring. This is not a problem. How do you discern between when it's everyday codependency and when it's healthy give and take and relating?
That's a good question. It actually brings up, we haven't really even talked about two other key ideas here with the everyday codependency. So just bear with me for a second. The one is the key idea that part of this process, like we said, part of this process is invalidating of emotions, not trusting your emotions, and trying to fix, trying to help. We don't even say the word fix to ourselves. We just say, I'm trying to help them, but I'm trying to be nice. It's like, you don't have to help. What if you just allow, right? Allow other people to be who they are. The thing is that we actually, and this is really hard for some people to swallow, but this is actually controlling. This is actually us trying to control other people. And that can be very confronting for people to wrap their mind around. When we say people are all good or all bad and judging other people, that's us attempting to control them. When we're basing our happiness on whether other people are doing what we want, that's us trying to control them. Simple examples of that are when our family members don't fold the towels the way we want them to fold them. And we take that to mean that they don't love us or respect us. That's codependency. That is making assumptions, personalizing a situation that probably doesn't have anything to do with their love and respect of you, probably has to do with they don't give a crap about the way the towels are folded, and it has nothing to do with you. But I can't tell you how many women I've spoken to that are like, yeah, but they don't respect me because they don't put their dish in the sink. And I'm like, have you made it clear that makes you feel unloved, first of all? Well, yes, I've complained about it forever. Well, have you made it clear that what the actual emotional consequences are for you, first of all? Well, yes. Okay, then are you going to sacrifice your happiness in order to control the other person's behavior? Because that's what you're doing.
That is so powerful. What a way to turn it around.
Exactly.
What a mirror to look into. You're thinking it's out here, and it's a soul mirror, right? Looking right back at you.
Exactly. And this is why, when I talk about boundaries being one of these ways that we really work with this process and release this process, is that I'd really differentiate between expectations of other people, expectations being us, basically a way that we try to control other people, and standards being, these are my values, these are my morals, and if we cross this line, that's not okay. Putting a dish in the sink isn't disrespect. Someone treating you disrespectfully, saying disrespectful things to you, that is disrespect. So it's understanding, well, this is actually what disrespect is. This is one of my standards. An expectation to put a plate in the sink does not necessarily mean disrespect, but you speaking disrespectfully to me does. And it's understanding the difference between standards and expectations with people, because expectations are the way that we try to control other people. And the reason we try to control other people is, it's ironic, but we have a terror of chaos And yet we have an addiction to it. This is such an interesting part of this.
Okay, tell me more how that works.
We don't want things to be chaotic, right? So we want other people to do what we want them to do when we want them to do it. We want other people to like us. We want everybody to like us. We want everybody to behave in ways that we can anticipate. We want people to basically be our little robots, essentially, But how boring would life be if everybody was just these little robots? However, and this is what's interesting when you get through this coping mechanism, is you find that eventually, as you turn the volume down on all of this control, these folks, they start looking for problems.
Mm-hmm.
They start looking for problems because the chaos is how they feel in control. So it's again that sense of when I help, when I fix, then I'm loved. If there's nothing to help and there's nothing to fix, how can I be loved?
And so they need chaos.
Yeah, a little bit.
They need problems. They need something that they can fix.
Right. And then that's when people start going, well, so-and-so hasn't texted me back and it's been 2 hours. And it's like, so what? They are allowed to text you when it works for them. Unless you've said, I need a response within an hour or something like that, or it's something time specific. Why are we placing this expectation upon their behavior and creating a problem when there isn't one?
That is powerful. All of the expectations that we put out there on how someone should be and how they should respond to us and what's not okay. It's really fascinating.
It's super fascinating.
I like how you differentiated between the standards and the expectations, because I think in order to know your standards or to actually have appropriate standards for yourself, you have to know who you are. You have to know your values and what matters most to you. And I think that is a huge challenge for a person who has never really been able to get to know who they are yet, because it's been about everybody else.
Exactly, which is why I call this a cycle, like that toxic cycle, because it all feeds into each other. And you know what I mean? It's like what is that, an Ouroboros, the snake that eats on its own tail, and it just keeps going around in circle.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of what it ends up being like. Because even if you think about standards versus expectations with boundary settings, right? Boundary setting. When we are taught that boundaries are about having expectations of other people, then suddenly boundaries become about other people. They're not about us. Boundaries are always about us. Boundaries are about, this is my values. This is what is appropriate. And either we meet this standard or I allow you to leave my life.
Yeah.
And then that goes back to the other podcast we talked about.
Yeah. So it's really even, that people have a choice of whether or not they are willing or able to honor a boundary that we set, and they're free to choose otherwise. And we are free to respond to that in whatever way we decide, but it's not about that other person again.
Right. And then if we continue with the cycle, it goes, well, we get terrified because most people, they'll set a boundary, but they won't reinforce the boundary. Mm-hmm. I always say boundaries aren't about setting the boundary. They're about reinforcing the boundary.
I love that.
Because it's not about telling your dog it can't be on the couch the first time. It's about telling it every time after,
I really mean it. Okay.
Right? No. Yes, exactly. It's about reinforcing the boundary. And so what happens though is because what we're really looking for is love, and to be loved, we're terrified that if we reinforce the boundary, we won't be loved.
So powerful.
And that this person will leave and that no one will ever come to take their place.
So you can have compassion, and it makes sense for why someone uses this coping mechanism. I mean, it works. And when you look at that, it's motivated by a desire for love and to be loved, you can understand it.
Absolutely.
And I think too that even for someone who is, who finds themselves in this everyday codependency, I think this can help you to also have compassion for yourself, not be so judgmental when you can. I think it's easier than looking at it through the lens of traditional codependency, because here it's a way of coping and you can learn new ways of coping.
Exactly. And in fact, it's rather easy to learn new ways of coping. And frankly, this is what all my clients say, at least, it feels so darn good. It's like you put down your axe, like you put down your sword. You're not fighting these battles anymore.
Yeah.
You don't have to fight to be loved. I mean, that's powerful. You don't have to fight to be loved. You just are. You just are.
So talk to me about what's the opposite of codependency and how does that fit into all of this?
The opposite of codependency is what I call boundless or unbound love. So what I mean by that is true unconditional love. It's true love without all of the expectations. It's true love without all of the sense of needing to earn it. It's love without the sense that of all of these strings attached, of all of these, there's all these rules attached. There's all of these whatever attached. And I want to make it very, very clear though. Unconditional love does not mean unconditional acceptance or unconditional invitation. As you guys know, if you've listened to the other podcasts, I have had some toxic people in my life who I have let go of. They are no longer in my life, but I still love them. They just don't have an invitation to be a part of my life anymore.
Yeah.
Because true moving through this codependent process says, I can love you, hold space in my heart, because our heart is absolutely endless in its capacity to love. We have no cap on how much love that we can have, that we can hold, that we can provide. It is endless. It is a fountain, absolutely infinite. And so it's infinite love. That's another word you could use for it, is if I can say, I love you, but I don't need to put up with this, or I love you, but I love myself enough to not have to do this anymore, suddenly we're free.
Wow. Really speaks to this process of you can still set the boundary, you can still let go, you can still release a relationship or a person, and it can all be done with love.
Absolutely. And in fact, I think that that's the only time we actually are really releasing the person. Otherwise, what we're doing, and I talk about this in the free ebook that I talked about, is we are actually being inauthentic by rebelling. We're being inauthentic by pushing away. We're being inauthentic by making a choice based upon what the other person is doing again. Oh, get away from me. I have to go into self-protection. Instead of saying, you know what? I am a soft-hearted, loving person, and I just can't hold space for this anymore. Big love to you, and I'll let you progress on your way. We don't have to be warriors to let people go.
That's so beautiful, Ash. It's really an acceptance of the other person.
Exactly.
This relationship may not work for us anymore. However, you're allowed to be who you are.
Exactly.
It's not, change for me, be this way for me. Or what if I change and I'm this way for you? That's taken out of the equation, that everyday codependency.
100%. And when it comes to ourselves, it's about that unconditional love and acceptance of ourselves as well. Of saying, I don't have to work this hard. I don't have to help. I don't have to be there for everybody. I don't have to martyr myself or sacrifice in order to be loved. Because look at me. I'm made of love. I'm made of love.
Ash, is there any other part of your book that you want to kind of share with us and give us some teasers about?
Oh, that's kind of interesting. Is this idea of affectionate non-attachment.
Okay, do tell.
Affectionate non-attachment is this idea. It's very related to what we were just talking about. It's this idea that it's very, very challenging. This is sort of an advanced concept in the book. But it's this idea of what's meant for me is meant for me, and what isn't meant for me isn't meant for me. It's this idea of I can love you, that's the affection, but I don't have to be attached to you being a certain kind of person, you showing up a certain kind of way, for things being how I want them to be, etc. When we talk about, law of attraction and manifestation and things like that, this is a concept that I really like to talk about as well. It's the idea of I want to create a loving relationship in my life. The problem is that people then date one person and they're like, but it has to be with this person. That's affectionate attachment, right? Instead of saying, because when we're affectionately non-attached, we say, I am going to have this beautiful, loving, intimate relationship. But if it's not you, that's okay. And I still love you and allow you to carry on your journey and release you.
Wow. This is so powerful. I'm like getting goosebumps.
Ooh.
This is this way of loving and relating, this dance of acceptance and love. It's so powerful, and how it can transform the experience you're having with this individual, how it just, the negative emotions such as anger and shame, or all the things that can get stirred up when we're in this very messy experience of human relating, it really is the remedy for all of that.
It really is. It's a holistic philosophy. And like I said, when we look at codependency this way, we realize that A, it's nothing to be ashamed of, but B, it's far more common than we think. And C, it's something that we can totally move beyond.
I'm just thinking of so many times when I've listened to a story where someone is just, they're truly in the throes of sadness and really wanting someone in their life to do something differently or be a different way, and not seeing it as, I'm controlling. I'm trying to get what I want. The way this person's being is not okay for me. I don't like this. A lot of effort going into trying to change everybody around us.
Imagine how much energy that would free up if we stopped that. We would all be like writing our novels and painting our paintings, and we'd be able to like create so many masterpieces if we just stopped trying to control everybody in every circumstance and folding all the towels perfect.
Yeah. Wow. So Ash, when is your book going to be out and how can people find it?
I don't have a specific release date yet. The plan is to have it come out in the next 2 months. Okay. And so my advice, as I've been referencing this free ebook, I have a free ebook called The No Bullshit Guide to Life. And the subtitle is Moving from Toxicity and Trauma to Embodied Sensual Awareness. Embodied sensual awareness is just this idea of being fully present, fully alive right here, right now, not putting off happiness till tomorrow. I would advise people to sign up for that book, read that book for now, because it's going to introduce you to a lot of these concepts that we talk about in this codependency book, and then you're going to be one of the first to know when it comes out.
And we will include in the show notes the link to your website so that they can sign up for this ebook. It sounds amazing.
I've gotten amazing reviews on it. I've had people print it out and put it on their bedside so they could highlight it and live by it, because I set out a 5-step plan to help shift some of these ways of really being of having this internal judge, of having this internal critic that truly tears you down. Like it goes in depth. It's like 70 pages. It's not one of these little tiny free ebooks.
The pamphlets or brochures,
right?
Called ebooks. Yeah.
Right? Exactly. Yeah.
Well, Ashlee, thank you again for this just incredible conversation, waking us up to a new way of looking at this coping mechanism that so many of us find ourselves in, and also sharing really a whole new way of looking at our role in this, our parts in it, and what needs to shift and why. It's just so much good stuff again. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me here to chat with you about it. You are the first person I thought of when I was like, I need to start talking about this philosophy.
Well, I am honored, and you're always welcome to come back and share more of your insights with our audience, because I feel like, I told you when I went to your website the first time, I felt like I was in a candy store. Okay, because there was a candy store for life shifts. Like there's just so much there that you take things and you just turn them another way, and yet you do it in a way that's so simple at the same time. It's not complicated. We complicate things.
Oh, girl.
What's the best way for our audience to find you and to sign up for your book?
We'll put the link in the comments, but it's on ashleegreer.com. They can just go straight to my website. There's a box right at the top of my website even where they can sign up for it. It's all over my website.
Okay. Well, go ahead and like I mentioned, we'll make sure that that's in the show notes. And again, thanks so much, Ash.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks so much for listening to the Women in Depth podcast. I hope it brings you a deeper understanding of yourself and others, and that you found some insights that illuminated and inspired. You can follow Women in Depth on Facebook and YouTube, and if you haven't yet, please subscribe on iTunes and leave a review. And finally, if you enjoy Women in Depth, please share with a friend. Again, thank you so much for listening, and see you next time.